Hello, welcome to the Digital Forge podcast. Today we are talking to Ben Morgan, the CEO of the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre at the University of Sheffield. Ben, welcome.
Morning, great to be here.
So Ben, you've had quite the journey from graduate to CEO of the AMRC. How did all that happen?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind over the last nearly 17 years. Really started with the financial crash, actually, David. So I had a job as I left university, was made redundant before I worked a day in that job. I came back from travelling, been made redundant, and was pointed at the AMRC. So I sent my CV down speculatively to Keith Ridgway, came in for an interview. I was asked, "Are you clever?" Which is the quite an interesting question to answer, actually. Managed to blag my way through that and found myself as a project engineer in the AMRC, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, Keith Ridgway is quite the force, isn't he? I mean, we both know him really well. And just on that, people in Sheffield sort of have heard of the AMRC. They might not fully understand what it does, where it is, how it started. Just maybe go through the history of how it all started. What is the AMRC all about?
Yeah, sure. So it started. Well, it was founded in 2001, but it started probably in the kind of late 90s with Keith, who was a professor at University of Sheffield, mechanical engineering, doing a huge amount of work in dynamics, machine tool dynamics. So how machines behave when they're machining metallics, and particularly kind of hard metallics, titaniums and nickel alloys, the sort of things you see aircraft made from. And he wanted to do more. He partnered with a local businessman, Adrian Allen, who was sales director at Technicut at the time. Again, a thriving local business, coming out to the park, the AMP, at the moment. So great success story. And wanted to do more, wanted to do it at scale. Fortuitous conversation with Boeing, and that the drive and the vision to really put Sheffield, Rotherham, South Yorkshire back on the map for advanced manufacturing. And the AMRC with Boeing was born in 2001. So trying to drive productivity and competitiveness into UK supply chain.
And before that first building that you built with Boeing was built, it was the old Orgreave coal mine.
It was.
Which was famous or infamous.
Yeah.
Back in the heyday of the miners' strike, and it is quite the shift, isn't it? I mean, when you think about what was going on there, previously,
it's huge. Yeah, and it's I guess some of my age, difficult to kind of probably comprehend the kind of the impact on the region, the deprivation. But we know, hugely high unemployment rates, particularly with males, kind of 16 to 30. And the shift there now, there's more high value jobs on the site than when the coking works was in its heyday. There's 2,500, 3,000 houses going up, already up, 4,500 planned, reopening the train station potentially. There's pubs, there's a STEM school. The kind of the Orgreave story is formidable, really, and kind of well recognised by government as well as the jewel in the crown in terms of that regeneration.
When you look at that image of the sort of before and after, and maybe we can, when we publish this, actually show that image of what was there previously in the 1980s versus what is there now. The transformation is extraordinary. I can't get my head around it, really.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's you go out on any of the kind of balconies in any of the AMRC buildings, and you can look over it. There's a fantastic view from the Future Energy Factory, formerly the Nuclear AMRC. You look over it and it's kind of pinch yourself sometimes, I think, just to see how that has changed, how that's shifted, and the opportunities that that's bringing to the region.
So the AMRC is part of the catapult network. I think was it, am I right in saying it was the first catapult?
Well, it predated the catapult, but yeah, catapult was brought together in 2011, and it was that there were, I think, 4 of the catapults were already there. They were already in place, and then 3 were created.
And just because I'm not even fully familiar myself, just explain what catapults are, what their goal is, what they're designed to do.
So, the catapult model, high value manufacturing catapult, they're funded by Innovate UK. The model is really around the coordination of a network of centres. And I think in the early days, that was just bringing the centres together. I think through the last 5 to 10 years of the network, it's really grown and kind of matured to the point now where we work on a lot of national challenges with multiple centres playing in their strengths into the network, but ultimately the same vision and mission as the AMRC broadly. It's about industrial transformation. It's about social mobility. Bringing together innovation, skills, supply chains to really make a difference.
So just on. The MRC is part of the university. It is an educational institution, but it's different, isn't it? Because most people, when they think of certainly a Russell Group university like the University of Sheffield, they think it's all theoretical learning and all of that. But that's not what the AMRC does, is it?
No, the AMRC. So there's something that was developed out of NASA called the Technology Readiness Level Scale, so TRLs, and that runs from 1 through to 9. And 1 is blue sky thinking, fundamental science. TRL 9 is kind of been in production a long time, tried and tested. Universities sit in that TRL 1 to 3 space. The AMRC sits in that kind of 4 through 6, 4 through 7, so-called kind of valley of death. So pulling through the science and commercialising it and making impact by applying it into industry.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because so much of research in particular never finds its way out of the lab or the research institution, but what I find really interesting at the AMRC, and I've got just spun something out which we'll talk about in a bit, but is the fact that you have real industry partners and you're really doing stuff. So just talk maybe about some of those partners and how that relates to research and how that all works.
Yeah. So, a good example would be our founding partner, right? Would be Boeing. And if I take the example of Boeing Sheffield, so for those that don't know, there is a Boeing facility in Sheffield. It manufactures metallic gear components that go into the actuators, which are the components that move the wings, move the flaps.
Is that the only outside of the US factory?
There's other factories outside the US, but it's the first and only factory in Europe.
Wow.
So, and that could have gone globally. Have gone globally. It was more competitive in Sheffield than anywhere else.
Why did they decide to put it in Sheffield? Why? What was the reason?
So they came to us in about, I think it was about 2015, 2016. I'm kind of racking my brains. They came to former CTO Sam Turner and said, "What do you know about gears?" And Sam said, not a lot, but we do know about machining, we do know about fundamental science, and we will pull together a team to, work on it with you. And I think it was a little over 3 years later, we were opening that facility. I say we, Boeing were opening that facility. And it was across a number of things. It was the science of how you can machine gears really quickly instead of using traditional, 4 or 5 machines to create that component. We could cut that down to 1 or 2 machines. It was the quality and the kind of the assurance we could put in. It was the digital systems. It was the skills we brought in terms of, I think there was 27 apprentices on day one that started there. And it was the IT infrastructure. It was the whole kind of enterprise IT system from getting the data from the machines, from the shop floor into the enterprise system to make really informed decisions.
So essentially what you're doing there is teaching or helping Boeing in this case, teaching them how to operate their machines in order to make stuff.
Yeah. So, I say it tentatively. They teach us a lot too, right?
Yeah.
You know, they know how to build aircraft, and we don't. But we bring a fresh set of eyes. Yeah. We bring new ideas. We work across multiple sectors, and we have time. You know, we have time to kind of scan the world for technology, working with academia, both in Sheffield and further afield. And what that allows us to do is kind of cherry pick the best bits and pull it together and de-risk it in a safe environment. So, you know, in that instance of Boeing, we had the same machines on our shop floor in the AMRC where we could trial and test and really de-risk that, so that when the factory was built, they knew it was going to work.
And really, I suppose the genesis of the AMRC is the machining group, and so many. And we discussed this in your office a month or so ago. So many of your spin outs have come from that machining group. Why is that? What's going on there?
So yeah, until you said it, I'd not really thought about it. It was a really interesting observation. I think it's because of the science. I think it is the machining group was, as you say, the genesis of the AMRC. It was the closest to the Faculty of Engineering, and it was really pulling through that kind of cutting edge science. And it's still probably, you know, we've got 8 groups at the AMRC across lots of different technology areas. It's probably still the best connected into that science base, and I think that gives you the opportunity to generate the IP, to find the white space where there isn't a product on the market, you know, where there is a challenge that's been unsolved, and you've got a great kind of market offering at that point.
So you've got a number of strategic industry partners, Rolls-Royce, etc. Just take us through some of those and tell us how you work with them.
Yeah, so we've got about 120 partners at the AMRC. At this point, I'll say, you know, you don't need to be a partner to work with us. So partnership offers lots of benefits in terms of kind of collaboration and networking events and kind of access to core research program. But any business can turn up and work with us. We've got the tier 1 partners, which tend to be the research consumers, if that's the right way to describe it. So, you know, Rolls-Royce's, BAE Systems, Airbus, Boeing, those types of businesses that have the challenges, that have the big challenges. We've also got tier 1 partners, you know, such as Siemens, Sandvik, those types of businesses, and they provide technology or software or hardware to AMRC. And ultimately, that ecosystem allows us to pull together turnkey solutions to offer into industry and de-risk them. And that's been, you know, part of the fundamentals of the AMRC for a long time. So it's a win-win for the research consumer, because they get a solution. It's a win for the suppliers, you know, both tier 1 and tier 2, because they've got this kind of ready-made market and they know that the solution they're offering as well, they've got a high degree of confidence that it's going to work when it goes into production as well. So, yeah, real win-win.
So some of the major achievements that you've had at the AMRC are staggering, right? I mean, one that really sticks out for me is the post-Brexit Airbus manufacturing planes here. Clearly there was a decision to be made when we left the EU about whether they were going to keep it here. But I've heard from multiple people, from the horse's mouth actually, that one of the major reasons they did that was because of the AMRC and the wing design. Just take us through because you also have, it's not just in Sheffield, is it? You also have a facility in Wales, and which is surprising to me. But just explain how that came around, and then what, to the extent you can talk about it, what you're doing with Airbus, or what you did with Airbus, and what impact that had.
Yeah. So Yeah, so we're up in Northwest with alongside BA Systems. We're in South Wales, on Baglan Bay, down there as well, with a very small office joint with Warwick, and as you say, we're up in Broughton as well, and we've got a really large facility in Broughton, funded by the Welsh government, heavily supported by the Welsh government, to support Airbus and support Airbus's supply chain. And you're right, Brexit was a real kind of, I think, a turning point, but it was a worry. In the UK, we are really good at making wings, really, really good. But with any business, you can't rest on your laurels, and these things, albeit factories are difficult to move, they're not impossible to move, and you can phase up production in other locations, you can phase down production in certain locations. So I think there was a real risk at that point, and no one had a crystal ball, but one of the things that we did do was work with Welsh Government very closely to set up our Broughton facility, AMRC Cymru, and about half that facility houses the next generation single aisle wing, Airbus's next generation single aisle wing, and a lot of the technologies that we've worked on in the AMRC for many years are on that wing. And what I've got to do is shout out to the rest of the research ecosystem across the UK, because across the high value manufacturing catapult network with MTC and others, we've got Nottingham University, we've got Cranfield University. There's a real powerhouse that's come together to support that, and it all comes together under that AMRC Wales roof, which is we're quite proud of that.
It's just incredible. And the impact, if you ever want to measure impact of something, just that fact alone is, I think, super interesting.
You know the kind of conversations we have here: honest, ambitious, and focused on what's really shaping the future of UK industry. Now, imagine taking them even further. That's exactly what the Digital Forge membership is about. This isn't just another network, it's a proving ground where connection, knowledge, and opportunity collide. As a member, you'll unlock exclusive events and curated networking with serious builders, a private community platform for real-time support, and a content and knowledge hub packed with insights you won't find anywhere else. Plus, you'll gain access to exclusive discounts and the chance to learn directly from mentors and seasoned founders who've already walked the path. Everything we do is built on trust, clarity and intent. No noise, no theatre, just the right conditions for progress. So if you're ready to join the future of UK industry and step into a community built to accelerate growth, join other members at forgedforgrowth.com.
One of the things I've always been curious about is a very traditional university, Russell Group University, like the University of Sheffield. How does it work when you how you treat education differently? Because you have this concept of apprentices and apprentice degrees. And I think that's brilliant. I think but there's this very traditional sort of British, almost snobby class system thing that apprentices can't have degrees.
Yeah.
What is the attitude towards that at the university, and what's your opinion of that?
Yeah. So, I will openly say that the AMRC Training Centre is the best thing that the AMRC Group has done. Yeah. Again, it was Keith's brainchild in probably 2011. Rolls-Royce were coming to the region to open their new factory, and I think the region, with any inward investment, was super excited, partying. And when the hangover kind of kicked in the next day, they thought, actually, people are going to move and go and work for Rolls-Royce and take up the fancy Derby wages, which I quite like. So, the response to that was, well, we need to train more of the local people. We know that we've got lots of forgotten postcodes, lots of deprivation across the city. And we also know that university education is expensive and it's not for everyone. And certainly what engineering doesn't need all the time is a load of graduates. There's definitely a place for graduates, but there is a huge place for people to run factories, to be hands-on and understand exactly what's going on. And that was the key. That was the key bit. I think so. To answer your question, for me, super, super important. I think there's some fantastic examples of people coming into that facility. Just give you one example. There was a lady called Becca who worked for me actually in Factory 2050, and she came up to us, and I didn't employ her, but kind of my group at the time. She said, "Thank you so much, Ben." And I said, "For what?" She said, "Well, I used to work in a chip shop in Rotherham, and I don't. And I've got this fantastic opportunity in Factory 2050, and there's nothing wrong with working in a chip shop in Rotherham, but that wasn't what she wanted to do. She had kind of, more ambition. And she's now working for Aston Martin Formula One team.
Really?
Outside of Silverstone. Yeah.
Wow.
So I saw on LinkedIn the other day a picture with her uncle, her dad, watching the GP at Silverstone. And, it's stories like that. She's gone from chip shop in Rotherham to Formula One, like the pinnacle of engineering. So, so it's huge. It is hugely important for the region.
So the AMRC clearly, and that's a really good example, has a critical role, not just regionally, but nationally for the United Kingdom, because we had an event here last night, and you were on the panel. So thank you for doing that. And it was all about reindustrialisation and the imperative need to do this and to do it quickly, and it's happening in the United States, as we know. One of the and this was triggered actually by Keith Ridgway's, when he did a keynote at the Digital Forge, and he pointed out that at the new wind farm launched with GB Energy recently, the only components that were made in the UK were the sandwiches and the coffee, and it's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it is actually, he's making a point that we have to be in a position where we can make stuff.
Yep.
In this country. But to make stuff, you need people that know how to make stuff.
Yeah.
What terrifies me is this massive skill shortage.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation last night about Gen Zs that would rather be influencers than manufacturers. And we've damaged, by deindustrialization, and this is my opinion, I think we have damaged the view that people have about manufacturing being, it's not something I want to do. How do we fix this? What do we do? And what are the AMRC doing? Yeah,
that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And I think, just to kind of emphasize your point a little there, we are, if we think it's bad now, we're heading to a real challenge whereby, and if I just take the three sectors that we're kind of working in, if there's a launch of the next generation single aisle, there's going to be a real press on skills, because we're going to be looking to manufacture rate 75, 100 aircraft per month, and that will be Boeing doing that. That will be Airbus doing that. A couple of hundred aircraft a month. So huge pressure on the supply chain. At the same point that we might try to be manufacturing, well, hopefully we'll be trying to manufacture SMR. So precision, metallic machining, welding, all these skills.
So, SMR, just explain what SMR.
Sorry, small modular reactors. So clean energy. Recent announcement from the government to reindustrialise, to place orders around small modular reactors, and amongst other nuclear opportunities as well. And then defence, we know we've got a fighter jet programme with BAE Systems, global combat air programme with Italy, with Japan, and we're going to be hopefully manufacturing those aircraft as well. So, and that's just three sectors, and that's just three products, basically. You're going to have a huge, huge skills programme. So what do? We've following that conversation last night, I think we've got to talk to Gen Z differently.
Yeah.
I think we're not talking the same language, so I think we've got to understand that better, and I think there are people who do understand that better. We have got to, clearly get into schools and show the opportunities for these kids, what they can do, how they can make the world a better place, how they can express their creativity. But I think it's got to be a really well thought through journey. It can't be discrete points where they come for a day and they do something and they go away for, the next 10 weeks and don't do anything. It needs to be kind of continuity of engineering and manufacturing being a really viable and really exciting opportunity. And I think, what we've now got with the industrial strategy is the business confidence. We now need to, drive that into the grassroots, into the secondary schools and the primary schools, because it's still not there. I think the understanding of manufacturing just simply isn't there.
How agile can we be in turning this around? Is this turning an oil tanker, or is it something we can do quicker? And what can we do to speed this up?
I think, maybe not an oil tanker, but it's certainly not an overnight thing.
Yeah.
Lots of businesses put a lot of effort into STEM, and we spend a lot of time on it. We touch a lot of the schools in the region, hold a lot of kind of robotics events, and they're great. They're some of the best days in my job, frankly, handing out those certificates. What can we do? I think there's a lot around education of teachers, and it's not to blame teachers. They have a huge amount of pressure on them. My wife's a teacher, so I kind of live it daily. Yeah. But yeah, showing them the opportunities and helping them understand and guide children who have an interest in science and technology, engineering, maths, but also some more of the creative industries. And with your background,
yeah.
Some of the best AI analysts and data scientists have done English literature or arts or something totally
absolutely
unrelated. So I think that, encouraging that diversity into what we're doing, has got to be done.
Just before we get on to the future and how you see things playing out at and how the AMRC is going to impact that, are you having discussions with government about this stuff, and do they understand it?
So,
to the extent you can talk about it, I don't want to breach.
Yeah, of course. Skills comes up time and time again, and skills. I would say it's a bit of a funny one, because the regional. So we're a small part of the regional delivery of skills. We're one of the two universities in the city, and we've got a training centre, the Sheffield College, and there's all sorts of other fantastic institutions kind of delivering talent into the sector. Where we're focusing our conversations with government is around probably innovation. It's more around how do we deliver the cutting edge innovation, but how do we drive up adoption of technology in SMEs and mid-sized business. Yeah. And the skills piece, but the skills piece tends to be more of that regional discussion. But there's so many colleges in the country, the coordination of that isn't currently in the kind of remit of the high value manufacturing catapult, although we have done quite a lot of skills foresighting to say, to really be clear on these are the types of skills that manufacturing is going to need or needs now for the future. Yes, we are having it probably more at the network level than directly at the AMRC level.
One of the one thesis, and we just touched on it, but with AI and the impact artificial intelligence can have, is can AI potentially fill some of the skills gap where maybe it can automate, so instead of having 10 people working on a machine, you have one person working on 10 machines. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I think you see that.
Right. Okay, good.
And I think you see that in the early part with kind of automation and robotics. And there's examples of companies locally who, in the early days of their existence, would have machine tools, machining parts, and it will be one operator per machine, or maybe one operator per two machines at the absolute outset. You've got production lines now that are virtually lights out, and one operator is looking after 15, 25 machines, because they don't really need that human intervention unless something goes wrong, which is quite rare. Generally, if you put a human in the loop in certain scenarios with automation, that's when the problems occur, actually. Because, good automation and AI is the consistency of process, consistency of data. But, will AI take jobs? Yes, it will. But if we do it right and create competitive business, it will grow jobs immeasurably, and we absolutely have to do it.
So just as an extension to that, and I've spoken to Keith recently, Keith Ridgway, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, but at the inception of the AMRC, it was, as you mentioned earlier, to build a replica of a machine for Boeing, or Rolls-Royce, but in this case Boeing, and experiment on that machine to get optimal performance, and to actually check feasibility of some things. And Keith said, if he was going to build the AMRC today, he'd be using data. He'd be using artificial intelligence. He'd be using sensor information and all of that stuff. Is that what the AMRC is doing now? Are you pivoting away from machine replicas and using more and more data? I presume you are.
We are, but you still need to build the test components. So if I take an example of machining, back in 2010, if we were doing a job for an OEM, we might have manufactured 10 test components, and the power of simulation and AI and digital systems now will probably only machine one or two.
Yeah,
but we still have to machine them. We still have to prove them, and that's testament with the new Compass facility. So that's the composites at speed and scale. It's about an £80 million investment. Our first program on there is with Boeing. We're looking at the next generation of single aisle wing. We're trying to manufacture that wing, take it from 40 hours to 4 hours.
Wow.
So
what does that mean? What will that mean for Boeing if you can do that?
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
Yeah, really revolutionary in terms of their competitiveness. Some fantastic technology going into the facility, but it's not all about AI. It is about the digital systems. It is about the digital backbone. It is about the data. When we start to talk about assurance and the quality of the part and the efficiency, but you've got to get it all working together. And there's only, when you're talking about composite fibers and complex resins and these types of things, there's only so far that simulation will go. And who knows, when we've got quantum, maybe we don't need it. But whilst we don't in an accessible format, then we've got to do it in hardware.
Yeah, and I could completely agree with you. We recently spun out, as you know, from the MRC Digital CNC with Dr. Rob Ward, who's not quite a professor, he should be at the university, and the power of that company was we look for three things: deep domain expertise, customers using the technology, and data. Mm-hmm. And without the AMRC, two of those things would not exist. Data, because you have to cut stuff to know what's going to happen in this case, and customers, Boeing, Rolls-Royce, Airbus, McLaren, all because of the AMRC. So my question is, and I know you're passionate about this, there should be more spin-outs from the AMRC, given all those factors. Yeah. Why hasn't there been in the past, and will there be in the future, do you think?
Yeah. So I certainly hope so in the future. Yeah. I think we're starting to generate a pipeline of ideas. I passionately believe we've got a team of really entrepreneurial engineers at the AMRC. I think we have had for a long time. I think it's been difficult in the past with the different systems and kind of probably the accessibility to spin out. But, you know, we were talking about it a little bit last night. I think the university have gone a long way in the last 5-7 years to make a journey, make a commercialization journey that works. You know, I'm sure not perfect. I've not experienced it myself, although predating that, I did spin out a business from Sheffield, and it was pretty tough going. It was pretty tough work. So yeah, I think it was hard in the past. I'm not saying it's easy now. It is, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, right? But I think it is easier than it was. And I also would add that since 2011 we've had catapult funding, and catapult funding is it creates university owned IP, and it gives us quite a lot of scope to do new capability work. So with some of that work, we're really trying to kind of push the boundary and give people a bit of freedom.
I think you will get a $1 billion company spun out from the AMRC. I think it's inevitable. The process that I went through with digital CNC was actually okay.
Yeah.
It was not the horrific thing I thought it was going to be, which is positive.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect, but as you say, it's certainly a lot better than it must have been. I've no experience of it in the past. So one final question from me. In 5 years of your leadership, where would you hope the AMRC is going to be? What does the future look like at the AMRC?
Okay. Tough question. We are really trying to grow impact. So in 5 years of the AMRC, I'd really like to see, you know, a number of inward investments. So we talked a little bit about skills. We get over 1,000 applications for 250 apprenticeship spots. I'd love that we could take on 500 apprentices per year and really populate the factories. We had some fantastic news of Walsin investing in the region, investing in special melted products, in AML, two fantastic regional companies. Yeah. And that's really good news. And, you know, what I'd like to see is us supporting and driving and leading some more of those inward investments. I think the spin out piece, you know, wouldn't it be great to say we'd done 10 spin outs a year for, you know, for the next 5 years, 50 spin outs. Yeah. You know, whether that's feasible, I'm not sure. But we're starting to ramp up and we're getting the support as well. So, you know, we've had an internal program called Ferret Works, really kind of engineer led, try, fail fast. That is being supported now by the region, and we're bringing in businesses to get access to the AMRC, startup businesses to get access to the AMRC to really try and kind of grow that. So hoping we see a real kind of explosion in that ecosystem as well. And, you know, last night, Digital Forge, you know, it's testament to that you could feel the energy in the room. It was buzzing with excitement. And talking to a couple of guys, they've set up a business before they've left university. You know, the guy had made £30,000 when he was 15, you know, selling chips that he knew were going to be in short supply because of COVID, you know, at 15. It's just fantastic. So there's some brilliant stories and some brilliant talent coming through.
Thank you so much, Ben. I mean, that has been an absolutely fascinating walk through what I think is one of the, if not the most important economic generator in our region, which is the AMRC, and it's absolutely critical to our local economy. And just that perspective of taking what was an absolute train wreck at Orgreave, miners' strike, all those images, and now one of the world's greatest manufacturing research institutions, and I don't think there's any debate about that, creating jobs, creating economic prosperity, creating opportunities for our region. So you have a very important job. Is there anything else that you want to add to this?
No, I think
no pressure.
Wish me luck. But no, just to, you know, thanks for having me on, David. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
What if your aligner system could drive more profit for your dental business? With PureTech Clear Aligners, our AI-powered software delivers instant smile previews. Our custom aligners, proudly made in Sheffield, arrive in just days, not weeks. Patient wait times are reduced with localised labs, and our revolutionary technology offers smoother workflows, higher conversions and happier patients. Be part of the future of aligner care. Start your pilot today at puretech.ai. PureTech Aligners. Smile brighter, smile sooner.